Hello and welcome to another interview series here at HPFC. Today I have a real pleasure of having Coach Peyvand Mossavat here. Jokingly, Peyvand, people were saying, well, you had Dan Gasper. You got to get Ronaldo next. I said, don't worry, I got somebody better that's better known in Canada than most of the players, who is Coach Peyvand. I mean, Coach Peyvand
I
doesn't.
highly doubt that, but I appreciate that.
No. I mean, when it comes to, without joking aside, without making jokes, anybody who's played football in Canada or who's been in Ontario in football in any level would know Coach Peyvand because he's a well-known figure in the community. He's worked at every level, from the developmental level all the way up to the university, provincial, and the national level. So today it's a real pleasure. Again, along the same lines, success leaves clue. Peyvand has had success again at every level that he's coached. So it's a real honor to have him here and talk to him and try to learn from him. And more importantly, because he's been a university coach, get to ask him some questions that parents and players may have in regards to getting scholarships and going in that athletics routes. So without any further ado, Coach Peyvand, hello, welcome. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you, Mo. Appreciate all the kind words. Don't know how much of it is true, but but I appreciate the your kind words and thoughts on that.
No, I mean the record speaks for itself. I have a quick little bio, but if you don't mind, Peyvand, would you mind giving us a little bit background for some parents who might not be familiar, obviously haven't played or haven't been in football for long, may not be familiar with your background. If you mind just giving us a quick rundown from when you started playing, how that went, and then transitioning to coaching.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously started playing soccer in Iran, part of club system, and then moved to Canada when I was 15. The first year being here, didn't really think that there was much soccer here, but then kind of got involved. Somebody saw me play at the park, got involved in the park, or in the community league, with Willowdale Soccer Club, and then the following year moved to what was called at the time National Soccer League (NSL), with a couple of community clubs, North York Hearts. So at the time there were Armadale, um, and then Cosmos in North York, and then from there ended up playing on the men's team with Armadale, and then we had one of our former players on the team who was a provincial team coach and said, hey, I should send you to try out for the Olympic team, and I became part of the Olympic program. I got drafted in CSL in the Canadian League back then, which is now we've started this CPL again, and which was at the time was called CSL, teams right across Canada, which was a fantastic league. I drafted there, but unfortunately that league folded. So then in search of football, trying to play professionally, it was difficult. You knocked on every door, Europe, Canada, US, and then, ended up playing some indoor soccer in the US League, US Canada League, in A League, for a few years. And then sort of closer to retirement, kind of finished playing in the CPSL at the time, which was a sort of a Canadian semi-pro league at the time, and played for years in there. And at the end of that period, kind of got involved in coaching, and then the rest is history.
How old were you when you started coaching, Peyvand?
I probably my first coaching assignment. I mean, I was always in sports. I was also a swimming instructor and a swim coach. So I was working in Parks and Rec as a swimming instructor and a swimming coach. So I was always coaching. Football coaching kind of started when I was with the Olympic team, and we made some appearances, and or with the Olympic program, I should say, made some appearances, and then at the time, Ontario Soccer kind of controlled all the community camps, soccer camps. So I was part of that. It was a summer job when I did some camps. So when I was like 22, 23, and throughout my playing career, I always, if there was an opportunity to go in the community and coach and run sessions as a soccer player in that city, when I was in Canton, or in Cleveland or Toronto, or wherever I was playing, if there was an opportunity to go and make an appearance and run some sessions, I always did that. But when I was 30 and kind of coming to the end of my soccer career, I went back to the club you played at, as the technical director, and it was my first really coaching assignment. And I started coaching the team that you ended up playing on as well, first with the '84 boys, and I had those guys, and I kind of transitioned those kids into our men's program. But that's how I started. I started with North York Hearts, and it was a club that I played for as a kid, and
Exactly.
so it was a great pleasure to come in. And at that time, there were a handful of technical directors, right? It was early. We were early in our development stage of having organizations have technical directors, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a learning environment for sure, without a doubt. I hadn't done any coaching education, and it wasn't as prevalent as it is now, where everybody's jumping in and it's required, right? At the time, it wasn't. I was a former player turned technical director and coach. So, but I was lucky because I kind of had some good mentors around me. What I did is that I, found people that I respected in the community and try to learn from them, right? So that's how my coaching kind of career started, right?
You always had this urge to teach and to coach, Peyvand?
I think so. I think my father was a teacher. God bless his soul, and so there was always this teacher in me. I think, and professionally, I taught for 3-4 years at a high school as well. But so there was always a teacher in me, yeah, and I enjoyed that aspect of it, right? I enjoyed learning part and as well as teaching part, and so that's kind of where I was at, right?
What things did you learn from a player's perspective that later helped you as a coach?
Honestly, I think I've thought about that at times, and what did I bring um, into my coaching? I was in soccer during a tough period, right? Because soccer kind of died in Canada, professional soccer died. We didn't have as many opportunities as now, so you're always trying to find opportunities. And along the way, I had some good, fantastic experiences and some bad experiences. Where I was, not to blame anybody, but I was led to believe, that there was a different, light at the end of the tunnel, but that light ended up being a train, and I trusted some coaches and some people that I listened to, and that maybe I shouldn't have, and so I think from the ethical part of things, I think I wanted to make sure that I made better decisions for my kids that I coached, right? Try to guide them, that way. I got drafted in the Canadian League, and at the time I went to my coach and I had a full scholarship at University of Richmond, and I said, "Hey, coach, at the time it was professional, so you signed the pro contract, you couldn't." And that coach kind of said, no, no, stay here. Maybe he had different things in mind, oh no, stay here, don't take that, it'll be great for you. And so I listened to that and ended up, being the wrong decision, academically, because then I ended up having to go back to school as an adult. And, so I wanted to make sure that I didn't make those decisions. I made I helped kids or guide them to make the better decision for themselves. Um, the game itself, honesty and, hard work. And I was a hardworking player. And I think when, as a coach, I demanded that. And, I think, that a little bit, from personal experience, I demanded that, fitness was important for me. And so I demanded that. So that kind of translated into the game for me as a coach. Um, and then the other piece of it, I think from game itself, I think recognition of certain moments in the game, as a player, I was able to translate those things into coaching and recognize things maybe more than somebody who hadn't played as much, potentially. Um, and then as I started educating myself about the game, and that was a reality check about how little I know about the game, and you know how much more you kind of need to learn. And every time you see something or you read something, you're like, oh my God, how come I didn't know this, right? And so, so those are sort of the what translated from playing, or transferred from playing into coaching career, right?
One question that came to mind while you were speaking, and something that we're going to talk about later when we talk about universities and athletics for students. But looking back now, what advice would you give to students who have both options? One to continue an academic and athletic career, and one to go the professional level. I know times have changed, but how do
No,
you?
no, no, absolutely, absolutely. It's a topic of conversation right now. I'm having that conversation as we speak now, and I had that conversation in my last coaching assignment when I was at Ontario Tech with one of the players who didn't like what I had to say about that. So, our perception as an athlete about where we could go and how high we could go is different from someone sitting outside as a coach who could see what your potentials are at. And for me, at the end of the day, education is number one. If you are Alfonso Davies, right, that's playing right now, is making millions of dollars, I still, if he's my kid, I still will say to him, hey, take an online course, you know, um, just to educate yourself, right? It's not about you having to make a living, because if that kid doesn't play anymore starting today, he's still set for the rest of his life. But just to educate yourself, you know, um, academically as well as what you learn, in life. But majority of kids aren't, especially from, in our environments, 99% of the kids aren't in that position to be able to retire from football. So I say, why not do it alongside? And if somebody has great potential to go in and and be a professional where you could already make hundreds of thousands of dollars, playing football, I still would say continue studying. And if you're not there to right away go into football to make a couple $100,000 minimum a year already, then I say go get an education first. Because by the time you're 21, whether you're in NCAA, whether you're in the Canadian League, now there's pathway from Canadian League into CPL and stuff. But at the end of that, you have an education, you have a degree you can fall back on, right? So my advice would always be, don't dismiss education because you think that you're going to be a pro and make millions of dollars playing football. And even if you are there and close to it, still continue educating yourself, even if it's one course a semester. By the time your career ends, you've accumulated a ton of credits and just education, right? And in an area that potentially you're interested in, right? So that's my personal thoughts on that.
Absolutely, because football, no, even if you make it to the professional level, it could end in a heartbeat at any point in your career.
Absolutely,
So I agree.
absolutely,
Yeah, you
right?
need to
So
have. So Peyvand, you went on to do some coaching education, and eventually you ended up in the university world. And as people can see on the screen here, you've been multiple time Coach of the Year winner at the provincial level, at the university level here in Ontario. You've been multiple time Coach of the Year winner across Canada. Along all the coaches who coach across different disciplines, you were selected twice as Coach of the Year, and you've coached at the provincial team level and the national team level. How did you go through that transition, and what education did you have to get as a coach to get to that level?
yeah, my story is a unique one, and I got to tell you, because I think it would, for anybody who has a goal or a plan. I went to watch some of your teammates in their first year, right? The boys were at Ryerson playing. It was their, that was a double cohort year. I think, well, they were a year younger than you, but they were playing at Ryerson. They said, "Oh, we got a game and we're playing." So I went to watch them play. I got there a little bit early. I watched the women's team play and lose poorly. And as I was standing on the sideline, I don't know if I've ever shared this story with you actually. As I was standing on the sideline watching, I asked somebody, "What's the score of this game?" And they were playing Ottawa or Queens, and it was like 11-0. And then I said to myself, "Oh man, it'd be great to be a college coach." This is all in my head within a 2-3 minutes time where I was just thinking about the future. And I already at that point I'd been coaching, the '84 boys successfully. With one got to OISL, and our men's team, they were playing on the men's team and they were doing well. And So I was like, yeah, I want to be a college coach. How can I get there? And, and I really want to coach internationally. And what would be a good place to coach? Probably the World University Games, because I played for Canada at the World University Games. And I said, but to coach there, you probably have to be a college coach. Where can you go? I don't know what schools have a program, but this program, it's kind of starting. You know, Obviously not in a good. They're not in a good spot, so I can make a difference here. And if I make a difference here, then I could get some experience and then create, maybe go to another program and make that bigger. And then maybe from there could go into being a coach of Canada at the World University Game. And then as from there, I could, get into a national program. And so that right away, I kind of created this path for myself. And I said, okay, to get there, you got to continue educating yourself. And so there was an end goal, right, for me. And then I said, okay, every decision I kind of made was so I could put myself in that path, right? And that's how really it started. It started by having that goal and saying. So then I literally, when I proposed the job to Ryerson, I said I could come in here and change the program. And the gentleman who was the athletic director there, Dave Dubois, that I'm indebted to for the opportunity to start me off. He says, you think, and I happened to know Dave. I didn't know he was the AD there. I just happened to call and he answered the phone. And I was like, oh my God, I worked for him when I was a kid at Parks and Rec. And I said I could, make the change here. I could, make this program competitive. And he says, it'll take you 10 years. And at that time, they had gone through 7 years of, I think they had won one game in 7 years. And so I took that program, and my second recruiting class was in the playoffs for the first time in the school history. And, we had Andrea Razzo was the first ever female All-Canadian at Ryerson, across all sports, not just soccer. It was the first ever female All-Canadian. And she, so we ended up recruiting some great kids coming to that program. And then that's how I started. And then there was a job opportunity to go into a full-time position at York for a year. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. I left. And then Ontario Tech was, had started a men's program. They were thinking of maybe potentially down the road. Again, I sat down and mapped that out. I literally on a piece of paper put OUA, where do I go? Okay, I want to go to Ontario Tech. How do I get there? Hey, let's get into that environment in that region to work. I called, my former teammate and good friend, Brian Rosenfeld, who's, director of, soccer with Ontario Soccer. At the time, he was high performance, I think, manager. And so I got involved coaching with the provincial team, gave me an opportunity there with the girls team, and then brought me into NTC, the National Training Center, and Kadisha Buchanan and Ashley Lawrence and Michelle Prince, that very successful group. And then I had the pleasure of coaching, Jesse Fleming and the provincial team, and Deanne Rose. And so that provincial team sort of continued on and gained experience from there, learned a ton of things from people who were there, who've been there. Brian himself, who was 3 times at the World Cup. And then, I kind of positioned myself by working in Oshawa with Oshawa Turo club again, who had, really didn't have a development program. At the time when I went there, I think they had 260, 70 kids. When I left, we had about 700 kids and teams in every position or every age group. And then from there, opportunity came up, went for an interview, started the Ontario Tech program, the girls side. It was a very small paying job, but opportunity was great. We started from scratch, recruited in 5 months. And I think you might remember at the time we were in Spain with the provincial team. And while everybody was sleeping, I was, making phone calls to, kids in Toronto, trying to recruit kids. And in 5 months, I recruited about, 17, 18 kids. And, year one, nobody thought we would win a single game. I remember winning our first game, and our athletic director was tapping me on the back, goes, hey, this is great. Don't worry. These are not, they don't come often. It's going to be difficult for first 3-4 years. And first year we were in the playoffs. Year two, we were top 3 teams in our division, and we ended up winning the first ever playoff game. for the school, new program. And then year three, we're in a medal game with the defending Ontario champs, who were Wilfrid Laurier, a school that's won several national championships, and we end up winning a medal and going to national championships for the first time. And then by year five, we're undefeated season, and so that's how it started. And then then that dream of wanting to coach one of the Canadian teams came true, and I happened to get selected to coach the Canadian team at the World University Games. And we went and made some history there. We were, first team on the female side, soccer side, to make it to the Final Four. We made it to the Final Four. Unfortunately, lost. We had an undefeated, path, 4 games, all the way to the medal game. Unfortunately, ended up losing to Japan and Russia, that were they all had like 7-8 international players on their teams. And but yeah, and along the way, some success, and some people recognized us for success we've had, and some coaching awards, etc., etc. But I see in this